Okay, the attendees are joining now.
Good evening, everyone. We'll be getting started in just a minute. We see you all jumping into the room, so we want to give a few minutes for our attendees to join us. We do thank everyone for taking time out of your evening, whether it's dinner time or TV time, to hear about this important topic. So we'll get started shortly.
Buenas noches a todos. Ya empezaremos en unos momentos. Estamos esperando que sigan entrando más personas. Sabemos que es el momento de la cena o quizás están viendo la televisión, pero ya empezaremos en un momento.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Let's see a question. We're going to go ahead and get started. One of the things we want to do as a quick housekeeping, one, this event will be recorded, so you'll have an opportunity to listen to the presentation and share the presentation with your friends and students and family. At the end of this event, an email will get sent to everyone who registered for this conversation this evening. In addition, there will be a globe that should pop up at the bottom where you see the chat, question and answer, raise hand. There's going to be a globe. There is where we are providing Spanish translation. So you can click on the globe and select Spanish if you are in need of Spanish translation. And we have an interpreter who will simultaneously translate what we are discussing in the room so that you will be able to follow the conversation in real time. Myra, I'm going to turn it over to you to provide the translation so we can provide that, we could offer it.
Thank you, Thomas. Hola a todos, soy Mayra, la intérprete de esta noche. En unos momentos se encenderá la función de interpretación al español e inglés. Verán un globo terráqueo al inferior de su pantalla y van a poder oprimir este botón y seleccionar español si desean escuchar la interpretación al español. Como dijo Tomás, esta sesión se va a grabar para los padres que no pudieron asistir el día de hoy o a los estudiantes. Y si se registró, se les va a enviar esta grabación si es que la desean. Thank you.
It should have popped up at the bottom now.
Great. So as we mentioned, the globe has popped up on your screen. If you are in need of Spanish translation, please select the interpretation and select Spanish. So with that, we want to thank you everyone for joining us this evening for this important conversation. My name is Thomas Varela. I serve as the Director of Advocacy and Communications for the Urban League of Philadelphia. And on behalf of the equity-centered organizations, PA Schoolworks, we thank you all for joining us this evening for this critical conversation on the education funding and the student perspective. For those that are not aware, PA Schoolworks is a statewide coalition of organizations, both grassroots and statewide associations that are focused on adequate and equitable school funding. So essentially our work is to help the legislature, the General Assembly, understand the importance of providing more money to our schools and make sure that that money is equitably distributed, excuse me for fumbling of the words. So it's important that we understand that point because we know for our future as Pennsylvanians that education is the start. And we know that in order to maximize the potential for success of our future leaders, and our future workers and our future citizens, it's important that our schools are funded. So PA School Works has been working on this issue tirelessly for a number of years. For some that have followed the campaign, you may be aware of the work under the Campaign for Fair Funding Education that pushed for the enactment of a fair funding formula. We'll talk a little bit about the fair funding formula, but more importantly, we'll talk about why that still remains a concern for us here in the state. But our work within PA School Works built off of that campaign because we recognize that in order for Pennsylvania students to be served well, it's important for the students to receive the funding that they need. They need to have the thriving communities and have the support and services that they need to be successful. So we have worked together since that time to help encourage families and students to understand the issue. We also talk to legislators. We also talk to the governor and other stakeholders to help them understand why this issue is critical, why it's important that we fund our schools, and more importantly, ensure that we fund our schools equitably and adequately, because we know that for some individuals, they feel that schools are funded appropriately. However, we see the disparities that exist across the Commonwealth, and it's important that we put pressure on legislators so that they understand that the money that they believe that they're allocating to our schools, we want them to understand that it's not enough. So that's the larger campaign. There's also a small subset of organizations that are part of PA School Works outside of one that have come together to, we're commonly known as the Resource Equity Funders Collaborative, but essentially we are a smaller subset of PA School Works that's focused exclusively on the equity component. And more importantly, uplifting the voices of parents and students to understand this work around school funding, but more importantly, give them a space to understand the issue, give them a space to become stronger advocates, and give them a space to have ownership of how their students and how their school districts are funded. Because at the end of the day, we are working on behalf of students and we are working on behalf of parents. So it's important to provide a space for parents to understand this issue. And that's what has brought everyone here today to talk about this issue of school funding. And also highlight this upcoming trial that is historic in nature and has significant ramifications on the future of school funding. And this evening, we have Deborah Gordon-Clare from the Education Law Center, who will provide some context as to the upcoming lawsuit. Why is it that this lawsuit is here? What is it hoping to accomplish? What is the pushback? And how you all as family members and students and how you all can amplify the need to pay attention to this lawsuit. So without further ado, Deborah, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Thomas, so much. And thanks everyone for being here, and huge shout out to the students because you are why we are doing this work, and the state, and we collectively need to do better by you and for you and with you. I'm going to share just a few slides, and I'm going to be fast talking about our fair funding litigation because I think you are all here tonight, not to hear from me, but to hear directly from the students about why this matters. But just to lay some context into sort of where we are and what's happening starting this Friday. I am going to share my screen. Okay, you can see it. Thumbs up. Great. All right. So I'm Deborah Gordon-Clare. I'm the Executive Director of the Education Law Center, but I stuck the logo not only of ELC, but also Public Interest Law Center on these slides because we are bringing this lawsuit together with both public interest legal organizations. And side note, students, if you're interested in, being pre-law, I'm always also happy to talk to you about that too. But we're law firms who serve the public interest, and through lots of decades, we are 46 years in existence at the Education Law Center. I've been here for 16 of them. We have long known that our funding in Pennsylvania is inequitable, inadequate, and it's unconstitutional. And so that's why we're suing the state. Pennsylvania is ranked 45th. So schools are funded by the state, the local, and a little bit by federal. And in most states across the country, the state pays the largest share of that education in the local school districts. But in Pennsylvania, it's flipped, it's backwards, and it's wrong, where we're overly reliant on local school districts, local communities to raise the money, because the state isn't doing its job. So we rank 45th out of 50 in terms of the state share of public education. And I include the slide to say this is from March 18th, 2020. Then all the articles about, let's talk about inequity and what's happening in our poor districts. It didn't take the pandemic for you to know that our schools have been unfairly and inequitably funded for decades. But there has been more talk about it, I would say, more recently, because the pandemic made it so clear that there were haves and have-not districts who really could not provide for their students during the pandemic. So it's a long-term problem here in Pennsylvania. There's no goal. The state does not have a goal of fully funding our schools, and so they don't. And they have a relatively low state contribution. They're not paying enough. I often talk about the pie. The pie, it's a question of how big is the pie and how is that pie distributed. And so low, in Pennsylvania, it's both too small and the way we distribute it isn't fair. And so what that results in is school districts and students in those school districts, through no fault of their own, don't have what they need, and they're not getting the services they need because the state isn't doing its job. And this impacts students, especially students in poor communities, but even holding poverty constant, it especially disproportionately harms students of color in Pennsylvania. And next, I actually usually have a slide that says, why does this matter? But I took out those slides because why this matters, you're going to hear directly from students about why this matters. But what are we doing about it? We filed a lawsuit 7 years ago against the state for failure to fund public education under the state constitution. The state constitution has what we call the education clause. This is count 1, where it says the General Assembly, that's what we call our legislature, the Pennsylvania House and the Pennsylvania Senate, they have the responsibility, they have to provide for the maintenance and support of a thorough and efficient system of public education to serve the needs of the Commonwealth. And they're not doing that. And then also we have equal protection provisions in our state constitution. So it's about equity and it's about adequacy. We don't have enough, the state isn't spending enough, and the way that they're spending it, and therefore that results in inequities. So we are representing, again, it's the Education Law Center and Public Interest Law Center, as well as a private law firm called O'Melveny. And we are representing 6 school districts: William Penn, Wilkes-Barre, Lancaster, Panther Valley, Greater Johnstown, and Shenandoah. But this is really on behalf of so many school districts, because in fact, 86% of school districts across Pennsylvania don't have what they need, are inadequately funded. And so while we are highlighting these 6 school districts, you may be speaking tonight from a different school district or listening from a different school district, and this may ring true to you. The experience of these petitioner school districts may be similar to what you're experiencing, and our goal is that we will change the way the state funds public education, and that will impact all of the school districts, not just the ones who are listed and named in our lawsuit. We're also representing the NAACP Pennsylvania State Conference and the Pennsylvania Association of Rural and Small Schools, as well as parents. And again, this issue of underfunding impacts students and school districts all over Pennsylvania: Northeast, Southwest, rural, urban, suburban. Who are we suing? Anybody who is responsible for the budget, which includes the governor, the State Department of Education, and the head of the legislature in both the House and the Senate, the leaders. And so we are suing them to get them to change the way schools are funded in Pennsylvania. We're asking the court to declare that the current system is unconstitutional, order them to stop using this inadequate, inequitable funding scheme, and create one that will now allow all students to meet state academic standards. So we're not saying, hey, court, tell the legislature it should be 4.6 billion and here's how you should do it. We're saying rule it unconstitutional and tell the legislature to fix it. But with that, we have a lot of evidence over why it's so broken and what would be involved in fixing it. So where are we now? We have done a lot of work over the past 7 years to get to trial, and trial starts this Friday and is expected to last at least for the next few months. And we're going to be talking about race and class disparities because we know that the way that the state funds education disproportionately impacts Black and Latinx students and students in poverty. And we're going to talk about the fact that money matters. And if we invest in our schools and if we invest in our students, that will make a huge difference. And we're also going to have expert witnesses who are going to testify at the trial to talk about how underfunded education is in Pennsylvania. I listed just a couple of the school districts, what their adequacy gap is. That's what the state should be paying, but isn't per student. So multiply that by an entire school district. And we're talking over $4.6 billion in terms of what the state currently pays, what school districts currently have, and what they should have. And we're hoping, Pennsylvania is pretty late in the game. Many other states have had these funding lawsuits, and so we can learn from them. And we can learn that when we have these lawsuits, it brings around more revenue than a state would otherwise have raised. It increases academic achievement, lifetime successes, and can sometimes break the political impasse of the legislature saying we won't do it because the court says fix it. So what can you do? First of all, thank you for being here to just learn about it tonight. We're really grateful. Second of all, there are many other opportunities to get involved. You can share your story, like some of our students are doing here tonight. You can write a letter to the editor. You can talk on social media about the case and about the issues. And we're going to be live streaming. The court will live stream the entire trial. So we'd love for you to come hang out in Harrisburg, but short of that, you can be watching from home and you can be watching maybe even from your school. You could talk about it with your teachers about that opportunity. But fundourschoolspa.org has a lot more information about the case, and fundourschoolspa.org/trial will have a link each day to the live stream of the case. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to you, Thomas. Stop share.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deborah, for that comprehensive presentation. And as we mentioned, this issue is critical. This has the opportunity to affect the entire Commonwealth. Every district, both urban, rural, suburban, they're all impacted in some way. And as we talked about, this is an issue that for me, I find really interesting because the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to be exact, has funded Pennsylvania schools at a much higher number. And I think this is really critical at this juncture because as Pennsylvania is becoming more diverse, it's unfortunate that the state is deciding to fund the schools less. And it's leaving it up to individuals to fill in the gap. And that's why we have the high disparity, because those who are wealthier are able to fill in that gap. And it leaves families who are not as well off to struggle. And I think that's critical for us to remember when we think about this issue, is the fact that Pennsylvania is becoming more diverse. And it's important that the Commonwealth understands that point, and more importantly, is committed to the same level that it has historically has done its commitment and its share to supporting students. So as we talk about students, I want to do a quick reminder. We are translating, we are providing Spanish translation. So if you join the room late, you can see at the bottom, there's a globe that says interpretation, and you can click on that and then click the language that you prefer. We do have a Spanish translator. So if you are in need of Spanish translation, please take advantage of that. So I'm going to turn it over to our featured presentation, featured speakers, because as we said, we're here working on behalf of students. And I think it's important, and I won't steal too much of Tamia's intro, but I think it's really important that we elevate and uplift the voices of students, because for many of them, they're experiencing school funding inadequacies now. This isn't hypothetical. This isn't a theoretical argument. These students are dealing with it right now in this current environment. And it's really important that we not lose sight of that as we as adults continue to advocate, to continue to fight. We want students to know that we are thinking of them. And we see them, and we want them to know that we are trying our best to fight for them. And so we are excited to have Tamia Scipio-Smith, the policy director for Children's First, formerly known as PCCY, who will lead us in this thoughtful and engaging conversation. So Tamia, thank you for joining us.
Sure, thank you, Thomas. Again, I'm Tamia Scipio-Smith. I'm the Education Policy Director at Children First, and it's my pleasure to work with young people to fight for education and for education funding. We too are part of the PA Schools Work campaign, as well as the REFC, and work together on issues related to, of course, K-12 education and quality education. Children First also works on early childhood education access to healthcare for all children, and juvenile justice issues. But with that, enough about me, and on to the students that are present this evening. Students, I'll call on you by the order that you appear on my screen. Please do announce your first name, last initial, as well as the school district you're representing this evening. So Hitesh, you're first on the screen.
Hi, my name is Hitesh G. I'm representing Methacton School District, and I'm a senior.
Thank you so much. Sophia?
Hi, my name is Sophia P. I am currently a freshman at Drexel University, but I just graduated this summer from Central York High School.
Tatiana?
Hi, my name is Tatiana. I'm a 10th grader at Philadelphia High School for Girls.
And Alan?
Hi, I'm Alan, and I'm representing Hanover High School, and I'm currently a junior.
Okay. Well, thank you all. As you can hear, we have a group of students from various school districts that look very different across the state. And so they're all here to participate in this conversation. So with that, I will direct my first question to Tatiana. You heard a bit from the attorney, Deborah Gordon-Clare, about why education funding is so important and why schools, parents, and communities are all going to trial on Friday, November 12th. Has education funding impacted you directly? And if so, how?
Yes, when it comes to school funding, for as long as I can remember, my schools have been underfunded from elementary to middle school to high school. As a sophomore now, they've always been underfunded. My schools have been significantly underfunded. I can't remember the last time I've been in a school building with proper ventilation, up-to-date textbooks, or a non-infested building. I have difficulty learning with a building that's short-staffed, that doesn't have the proper teachers or have the proper counselors. I have difficulty learning in an environment where my mental health or the teachers' mental health have not been taken into consideration. like I briefly mentioned before, I've been affected by the lack of funding in schools that I have attended. Although I do want to touch subject on what that actually means for me. I've been experiencing an environment where I feel like my education has been neglected to the point where I had some teachers openly admit to me that they're not given the tools to teach me efficiently. I've been in environments where they have been infected with bed bugs or rodents and more. I've been given out-to-date textbooks to teach me something as important as history, which I feel like is very important for young people of this nation to learn, And I feel like it's like being expected to know how to drive without ever be given a car or ever be put behind the wheel. As a student coming from Philadelphia School District, I cannot say with confidence that I have been given my best opportunity in getting a good education. And I think my opportunity starts now with this funding campaign. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. We're here fighting for you because that's not fair, that's not equitable, and you deserve so much more. Let's see. Alan, you attend school in the Hanover district in York County. Do you think that your school has resources or the resources that it needs for students in that district?
I feel like since we're a pretty small school, we have just enough for our students, but I don't think it would be enough in the case that we get more students, or the coming up students, like the new generation, would be enough since we have so many new kids coming in from different school districts or different places. I don't know if it would be enough. I definitely also feel like we are understaffed. Like we don't have enough teachers for like ESO kids or kids with disabilities, or teachers that can start new programs. Like Hanover has a welding program that I'm currently in. I don't think there's other programs like that that could stretch out and help our community or lead into colleges or stuff like that.
Well, thank you, Alan. Career and technical education and those programs that help to build skills are so important. And if we had the resources, school districts will be able to provide that opportunity for the students who really want to engage in those programs. Let's see. Hi, Tish. You're from, of course, a different area in the state, Montgomery County. Do you have the same experiences that you heard Tatiana and Alan talk about, or have your experiences been different?
I have not had the same experience. I'm a senior in Methacton High School. From my understanding, Methacton is a school district that is equitably and adequately funded. At my high school, I'm fortunate enough to have access to advanced placement and honors classes, laptops, guidance counselors, and facilities like libraries. These activities help me prepare for my future, and hopefully it's college. AP and honors classes challenge me to get prepared for college level. Laptops let me access online textbooks and library databases to do research papers. And all of our assignments are like turned into using Google Classroom. My guidance counselors also guide me through like every process and like any troubles I have, like college applications, and also like help me calm down because it is stressful. Libraries give us up-to-date textbooks, which provide us with information. And I feel these resources are vital for me because they really like keep us up to date with what's going on right now, like in the present times. And I would want my peers to have the same things. Thank you.
Thank you, Haitish. And Sophia, you mentioned a little bit earlier that you're a graduate from the Central York School District. Congratulations, you made it. Can you share a little bit about what you're doing now and how has the transition gone for you? Do you feel like you had resources or were adequately prepared?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, I'm a current freshman at Drexel University. I just graduated, and the transition to college or post high school graduation, whatever path students decide to take, is way harder than I could have ever imagined. Part of that, I think the pandemic definitely puts a bit of a damper on it, but I feel very ill prepared from like my experiences at high school. And, my peers that are attending the same university as me, I feel like they're much more prepared to approach the issues that I feel like there's a large disparity there. So yeah, I would say it's been a hard transition for sure. And I think that a good chunk of that does fall on the responsibility of my high school.
And Sophia, what do you think you could have had as a resource that would have helped to adequately prepare you?
So there's a couple things that come to mind with this question. One definitely has to do with college prep resources, such as being able to identify potential scholarships. Students coming from these ill-funded districts, and with the cost of higher education, it's very likely that scholarships are going to be a necessary means to fund higher education if they choose to take that route. Also like figuring out loans and stuff like that, just preparing for that transition out of high school into adulthood. Standardized test prep. My school offered one session, but it was not free. You had to pay to attend it, which obviously could be a burden to some students or a deterrent. I feel like that really made me feel ill prepared for attacking the college application process. Also with extracurriculars, I was a member of Model United Nations and our debate team. The debate team actually was suspended the fall term of my junior year because it could no longer be funded by the school. So in terms of transportation and registering for tournaments, and I feel like that's a great asset to students, engaging in public speaking skills and consensus building, things like that. It was really sad for me to see that club go. And then with Model United Nations, it's another club that I feel like has the potential to really provide students with essential skills to, carry with them throughout their adult and, career in the workforce. But it was another club that just did not have proper funding. I mean, there were even times where like students had to be able to fork up money to go to tournaments or stuff like that. Also, I think we were very ill-staffed. We had limited faculty. I know my guidance counselor had a bit over, I believe, like 100 students each. And so it just makes for a very impersonal experience. And that's someone who you sort of should be able to go to seek almost like a support system to help guide you through not only your high school career, but the transition to college. And not having that personal experience, it makes you feel sort of isolated, like you're handling this alone. And especially for first gen students, I can't imagine how daunting that must be.
Well, thank you so much, Sophia. Well, all of the students have shared a little bit about their stories. And so I'll ask you one more question to, for you all to to think about and chime in on. And that's really why should education funding matter to the people who are on this call and to the adults in the room, and also the adults who are making decisions about funding, and why should we care about this upcoming lawsuit? I'll start. Oh, sorry, I'll start with Tatiana. Let's see, maybe I'll come back. Let's see, Alan, are you on?
I think it matters because it's not only the children's future, it's our whole state's or country's future. We're the future, and the next generation is the future. If it's not properly, how do I say it? Like properly maintained or helped throughout, it would lead to failure or just not prosperity. It is important to us as, it is important to adults to see our perspective that we're living through it, since they might not see that they have a view through our eyes or through our experiences.
Thank you, Alan. Hi, Tish.
So I think adequate funding and helping students get the proper resources helps set them up for a successful future. It also helps them get jobs and experience needed to succeed. It opens opportunities for different career paths and also like contribute to the economy and helps it grow. And I think we all deserve to be prepared and to start our careers with the skills we need to succeed. Thank you.
Thanks, Tish. Tatiana, why should adults and the community members and folks who are on the call and in the community and students like you care about this lawsuit and education funding?
I think we should all care about this lawsuit because at the end of the day, we are the only future of America, this nation, and the human race as a whole. Without education, we can't move forward. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall in a lot of places. And without us being able to learn about past mistakes made by Americans and past faults of America, how will we move forward if we're not able to be in a building to learn how to get into college, or be in a building where we're able to get into a college where we can have doctors, we can have lawyers, we can have these things that are very important. So I think that is just very important for the future as a whole, really. And also for giving a more diverse America, where people of different cultures, different ethnicities, and different nationalities are in power. Because right now it's a very limited site, I would say. And I would say there's not a lot of people that look like me in power, or there's not a lot of people that I feel like have power that look like me. And I feel like that's a very serious issue. And it also comes down to problems like this, where certain places are not funded enough as they should be. And especially in Latino and African American communities, or minority communities.
Well, thank you, Tatiana. And Sophia, we'll close up with you as to why you think education funding is so important, and why folks on the call and in the community should care about this upcoming lawsuit?
Yeah, I think a lot of the students hit on some really important aspects of that. But I think most people can agree that high school is a very transformative period in our lives. It's a period of self-discovery, and the schools should serve as a support system to students rather than a deterrent. And it needs to be a place where it fosters a welcoming and pleasant atmosphere. You know, students want to be there, students want to learn, they feel like they have the opportunity and the resources to learn adequately and to enter a competitive college and job market. And you know, with schools like Central, we're a rapidly growing district, and you know, not having the means, our school not having the means to grow with the demands of the students, it's obvious. It's obvious when you enter the doors. It's obvious when you're in the school. So I can't imagine why you wouldn't care. You know, this is our future. And this is what students deserve. As Deborah Claire mentioned, it's our constitutional right. And it's essential that we receive this funding so that, I mean, I've finished my high school career already, but you know, maybe my kids or even people on the call, your kids, they shouldn't have to experience this sort of disparity within the education system that is none of their fault. So it's extremely important, and everybody in the state should care.
Well, thank you, Sophia. And thank you, students, for being brave enough to share your stories. I know that this is, you know, kind of a difficult experience to be vulnerable and share a little bit about your lives and what you're experiencing in the classroom. So thank you very much for coming this evening, for speaking up, for advocating for yourselves, and for advocating for the students that come after you. We greatly appreciate it. And we hope that you'll continue to fight with us and tune into the lawsuit on the 12th. With that, I will turn the program back over to Thomas, and we'll, I guess, close it out.
No, definitely. Thank you, Tamia, and thank you, students, for that enriching conversation. Once again, I echo Tamia's sentiment, your bravery and your willingness to tell your story, and recognize that you all are the future, and recognize so many different issues that are impacted by the lack of funding that you are currently experiencing, and more so the disparities that exist. I think that's something that's important to recognize. We do see the disparities where some students are receiving more than others. And I think that's something that's important to remember, that we are really thinking about equality of opportunity, right? Giving kids the opportunity to achieve what's destined to them. Some will do well, some will do super, some will do, you know, and everything in between. But it's really important that we are providing the opportunity for students to be successful. We're going to talk a little bit more about next steps, but I want to remind everyone, once again, we as PA School Works, we are a coalition of statewide organizations that are fighting to ensure that we are providing adequate and equitable school funding. Many of the individual organizations that put on this event today meet monthly, and we host different events. I'm going to put information on how to follow us on social media. We encourage you to do so. Follow our website. You have tons of information on the website as it relates to fact sheets, previous webinars that we've hosted, and other pertinent information. Also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. As a reminder, there are 8 individual organizations that are part of this equity-centered group that are fighting very closely on this issue of school funding and looking at this from an equity lens. So I want to thank thank Children's First, Education Law Center, One Pennsylvania, CASA, Make the Road Pennsylvania, Acclamo, Education Voters PA, and I believe I covered everyone. And once again, there's 8 of us. Urban League of Philadelphia, Children's First, Education Law Center, CASA, Acclamo, One PA, education voters and make the road PA. We encourage you to follow each of those individual organizations. We are doing tremendous work in our individual communities in York and Lancaster and Norristown and in the western part of the state, along with Philadelphia and the southeastern Pennsylvania region. And it's important to stay connected with these organizations so that you can become more informed on the issue. You have a space to be connected to this work. I'm going to turn it over to Susan Spicker, who is the Executive Director for Education Voters PA, who will provide some closing remarks, but also provide some next steps, spaces for you and opportunities for you to be closely aligned with this work of school funding, but then also how to pay attention to this lawsuit. I know Deborah Gordon-Claire provided the link to follow the day-to-day, but there are other ways for you to be involved. So Susan, thank you. And I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you. So I was going to let Tamia do this if she would like to, but I'm very happy to take this last little closing remark if that's okay. So, so we're so excited that you're here. We, as Thomas said, you know, PA Schools work is going to be a really good resource about things happening with the lawsuit. We also have a really neat resource at fundourschoolspa.org, which is a little really engaging website that is focused solely on the lawsuit itself. So the lawsuit is going to be streamed live every day, so there will not be spectators in the courtroom. However, everybody across the state and anywhere in the entire world can click on the link every day and watch on the YouTube channel. You can tune in and tune out and you can see what's happening. We are, if you're engaged on social media, our hashtag is going to be hashtag #FundOurSchoolsPA. So I would highly recommend kind of following that hashtag, and that will bring you to the different organizations that are doing the live tweeting and kind of feeding out the little tidbits that are happening during the lawsuit as the trial is going on. And just in general, I think, you know, being able to talk to your friends and to your, you know, I guess colleagues or your friends at school, your classmates about this. They also have an Instagram page, which is something that I think younger people like to be part of. So there's Fund Our Schools PA has an Instagram page, and there are going to be, I think, a lot of real serious moving stories that are going to be told during the course of this trial. And it will be, you know, when we hear from the plaintiffs, from the people who are actually living the lived experience of being in these classrooms, those are going to be some really serious stories. And these are stories that we need people throughout the entire Commonwealth to hear, because for so many years in Harrisburg, state lawmakers go into the building and they give schools a little bit of extra money, and then they come out and they pat themselves on the back and they say that they've done such a great job, they're doing such a great job funding our schools. And every year we know that in the schools that need the most, the students there fall further and further and further behind in terms of the level of resources that they have available to meet their needs. So we're going to hear from the plaintiffs, and then later on, you'll probably be very interested to hear from the defense and what other people have to say, the people who are defending the system, what they have to say. And my guess is that we are going to hear things that are going to be absolutely appalling and like shocking to the core of our being when people go to defend this system that is designed to ensure that the poorest, most vulnerable students in the state have the fewest resources in their classrooms. And so, you know, it's historic. It's been 7 years in the making. And, you know, I think there will be some really easy ways for you to just kind of tune in and get little bits and pieces that will add up to be a lot more of the storytelling. So we'll put in the chat, fundourschoolspa.org. I'll type it in. I can't type and talk at the same time. You can sign up for updates. And I highly recommend you go there, even if you're not super into email, even if you're young and not into email, you should sign up for the email updates, and you should check them, because they will really let you know what's happening at the trial. So I'm grateful that you were willing to spend all your time with us tonight. And I think Tamia and Thomas and Deborah, because these are three of like the statewide leaders in this whole fight. So thank you. I guess I'll turn it back over to Tamia for her final inspirational remarks.
Well, thank you all again for joining us, and Susan's being modest. She too was one of the statewide leaders in this work. So thank you, Susan, for those remarks. Well, who better to end this conversation with than a student? So I will ask the last question to Hitesh and to give him the opportunity to provide some closing words and remarks as to why students and these communities and all of us should care about education funding.
So we should really care about funding because, as I said, like as most of the people said, it's for our future. If we like make our future, it's basically our next generation. If the next generation is not well educated, we cannot expect our country or our state or our like town to grow. It's like everyone, if there is funding, we all, like everyone will be equal and they will all deserve to have the same chances as other students. No one will be like more educated or less educated than anyone else. They'll all be equal and be prepared and start their careers with the skills they need to succeed.
Well, thank you, Hitesh.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We all agree with that statement. Every child needs the resources to succeed. And thank you again for your advocacy. We appreciate everyone who jumped on the call this evening. And with that, I say good night.